dance too far out of the frame. Okay, tonight's topic is competence in information literacy. So I'm hoping that we can identify some of the ways that, that the information we find, not just on the internet, but in public spectrums, in the public environment, are hyped up. We all talk about the media, and you hear media reports on the news every day. How much of it instinctively do you trust?
Some of it, not all.
Some of it, not all of it. And that's the whole point of discussing information literacy. How can we tell the difference?
Well, there's a lot of drama, I guess, overly.
A lot of exaggeration.
Yeah.
There's a lot of political motivation. There's a lot of corporate, capitalist sort of hype, right? That gets you all charged up in one direction or another. And in academic research, those very human qualities are layered or woven into some of the scholarship that we seek out as well. So the whole point is to try and talk about ways that we can feel confident in the evidence or the research that we use. We just got our new wagon here, so I put some books out on our wagon that might be of interest to you. First of all, From Inquiry to Academic Writing. So here's a piece. Stuart Green is well respected. We talk a lot about the dragonfly effect. Quick, effective, and powerful ways to use social media. Again, social media has, I think, some very positive and far-reaching benefits, and it's got some very negative benefits. One of the things that stands out to me recently is the dentist who shot a lion in Africa. Did you see that? Just exploded all over social media. And yet, as I began to read more about the local area in Africa, read more about some of the political conditions, read more about the guides and the capitalists who took that $50,000 from the American dentist and set him up to kill a very endangered animal. So there were opposing forces there. That happens throughout popular culture, throughout social constructs, and it again happens in academic work. The culture of connectivity. How much of what we find on the internet do we think we're entitled to? How much intellectual property is published? Music, videos. It's on the internet, I'm just going to download it and have it. Well, really? Somebody created that, somebody owned that property. Somebody owned that intellectual idea. And is it right to just steal it?
No.
Those are some ethical issues that we need to be aware of.
You've
thought about that. You probably remember Napster, don't you? When we just downloaded music left and right, shared it and created playlists and until somebody said, wait a minute. I recorded that song, it's mine.
I was wondering how can they make any money anymore doing music?
And people just
if
think
everybody is just
you can go in and steal.
Yeah.
Well, the law is that you may not go in and steal.
Right.
And we need to make certain that, well, that our neighbors and that our sense of ethics are in place with that sort of thing. Culture is commons. How do we respectfully share our art and our intellectual property and our cultures, our cultural ideas? There are ways to do it with respect and with dignity. And that's what we hope to promote in scholarship, in our academic writing. The concept and the value and the ethical representation of citing sources, of being appropriate about crediting ideas that we use in our scholarship, that we use to generate our own narratives and write our own voices. Because when we've written a good piece of scholarship, we certainly want to be credited by the next person who builds on that cycle or that idea. That makes sense, doesn't it? That's competence in information literacy. That's being literate. That's one aspect of it. There are many more. So again, these books are all here. I also brought up the Googleization of everything. There's that corporate control. Google seems to be taking over the information world and thinking that they're the ones to access it.
What happened to Yahoo?
Yahoo still exists. Yahoo is the Explorer browser. But Google really, I mean, we use it's a verb now. We don't research anymore, we Google. What does that mean to us, and what does that say about the respect for intellectual property? And these are the kinds of things we're going to talk about in joining the Competence Club and exploring a conversation around information literacy. The American Library Association and the American College and Research Libraries, a division of ALA, have defined 5 key standards that I think they're not Moses' 10 Commandments, but I think they're good ethical guidelines. If you become aware of them and own them, they're a great way to determine and feel some sense of confidence and credibility, especially in academic scholarship. So, the information literate student determines the nature and extent of the information needed. I love that one. Because essentially what it says is, if you're writing a 5-page paper, you don't need 35 resources. You're just going to confuse yourself. So identify what you really want, what you really need. Access needed information effectively and efficiently. Don't get lost in that rabbit hole of the internet. But know what you're looking for and know which databases, which sites, which websites are going to have, again, the relevant or the credible evidence that you're looking for to write a good piece of whether it's psychology or business strategy and nonprofit environment planning. But don't get lost in it. Be efficient. Evaluates information and its sources critically and incorporates selected information into his or her knowledge base and value system. I like that point a lot. Don't just gather information because it was written by a scholar, it's peer-reviewed, therefore it is. Does it really fold into your own knowledge base and value system? Identify that you have a value system, that your grandmother taught you right, and that as you research, as you write, as you present ideas for the future, again, I'm going to overuse the word scholarship, but as you generate scholarship, make sure that that scholarship is woven into your core values. So the first thing an information literate individual does is recognize his or her own set of values. And don't waver. Don't let anybody else tell you what's right. Because your grandmother told you what was right. And trust that. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I love these key principles. And that leads me to my favorite key principle, and I call it, who's your mother? When you find any bit of evidence, when you find, again, academic research, when you find work in a printed book, and somebody says to you, this book's really great, this guy's really smart, don't take it at face value. Take a moment to learn. Read the jacket. Read who this man is. Read where he went to college. Did he go to college in the Deep South? And I don't mean that as a judgment. But you know, there are regional behaviors. Did he go to college in the Northeast? Did he go to college at Berkeley and did he wear ripped jeans? Was he a hippie? Can you relate to the man behind the evidence? The person behind the documentation that you're going to include in your core value system. So always ask yourself the question, and I make fun, but who's your mother? I'm going to go back to this because that's a live link to the internet, and we'll be working on it. Individually or as a member of a group, and we're all members of groups, whether it's our spiritual center, our church group, this AULA community, as an individual or a member of a group, uses information effectively to accomplish a specific purpose. You're not just gathering information, and you're not gathering information to write a paper for my research class, or for any one of your specific curriculum or course subjects. You're gathering information to build on your knowledge and your value system, and you're gathering information here at Antioch University to generate, to perpetuate social justice, to create change where you see things are broken. So you know what you have in mind when you begin to look for information. I'm not just looking for the sheer hell of it. I'm looking because I know something's broken. I'm going to discover what's broken, and I'm going to generate a plan to fix it. And what gives me the confidence to do that is that I trust in my core value systems. That makes sense, doesn't it? It sounds a little preachy, but if these things are on your mind as a competent, what's the word? Hunter, I don't know. Information seeker. Then that information process, that gathering process is kind of a pleasure. It's exciting. And your sense of accomplishment through the process is exponential, is built. An information literate student understands many of the economic, legal, and social issues surrounding the use of information, and accesses and uses information ethically and legally. So those are our 5 core standards, and these are the 5 values, if you will, that I'm going to look into as we poke around in the internet, as we Google.
Do you have a paper with that on it that you could pass?
I do. I have it here, and I didn't make extra copies, but thanks for asking. I will.
Okay.
I have the PowerPoint. You kind of like what it says, don't you?
Yes.
I'm glad you do. Good. I'll make you 100 copies.
I'll do what I
Standard 1, the information literate student determines the nature and extent of the information needed. That's key. That's the first thing. And it really is, I think, one of the most basic things. But again, if you're writing a 3 to 5 page paper, if you're preparing a presentation to your civic committee, if you live in a community where you feel that the Silicon Beach is eroding your sense of neighborhood, do you know what that means when I say that? I think that's something that's very, very local, and it was a conversation I attended this morning. I'm not making it up, but there are things happening in Westchester, in Inglewood, in Mar Vista, in Palms, in the neighborhoods around Culver City that are disturbing. There are people who've lived for generations, maybe 40, 50 years. There are people who've lived 20 years in middle-class homes, and because of the expanded and uncontrollable growth in Playa Vista, in Venice Beach, in Santa Monica, which is now being called Silicon Beach. They say it extends down to Manhattan Beach, which is including then Torrance. It's including...
Redondo.
Huh?
Redondo.
Redondo. And what's the city with a C?
Hermosa.
Huh?
Hermosa Beach, Crenshaw.
All of it. And what's happening is that real estate values, the cost of living, the average grocery store is becoming a Whole Foods. Carson I was looking for. It's extending that whole area. And if you need to speak in your community to defend that neighborhood where your grandmother lived, I'm using grandmother again, but and you're finding that these high-class corporate types are buying up the real estate or tearing down or changing the cultural tone, the environment of your area, you need to speak up for it. So you need to know who your audience is and the amount of information that you need. You need to know if it's government statistics. You need to know if the information that you're seeking is zoning. Do you need to search zoning and hearing board approvals to see what kind of trends are happening? Does that make sense? So the information literate student determines the nature, the audience, the content, the quantitative, the numbers that are involved in the information that you're after, and the extent of information that you need. I'm giving a 50-minute or 45-minute talk right now. So I need enough to talk for 45 minutes. I will be telling dirty jokes by the end of it because I could come up short, I don't know. But if I'm information literate, I've planned the content of what, where we're going to go and what we're going to talk about. So that's the first standard. Some things you need to know. I think, and to make this applicable to current school assignments, to your curriculum, to the work you're going to be doing, you again need to know what kind of assignment you're working on. Is it a 5-minute oral presentation? Is it a 10-page paper? Is it a 50-page paper? And I think it's obvious that that mandates, that tells you the amount of information and the amount of time that you need to invest. Kind of common sense, right? Does the information need to be recent? Is there value to seeking out legacy information? Is there value to making historic comparisons? Can you make a stronger, more compassionate point? If I go back to the example of local neighborhoods that are being swallowed up by rich young people who are bringing in Whole Foods and who are changing the cultural tone, the heritage. You're nodding like you kind of get. You've seen that happen in your own life.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have. Where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Virginia, but I've been here for about 8 or 9 years. But I didn't see what
And in
you
just
mean.
that short time, you've observed that in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And you probably saw it in Virginia.
Mm-hmm. Before I left.
What part of Virginia?
Richmond, that's where I'm from, but
Richmond?
I've been all over Virginia. I lived in Hampton and Newport News and somewhere everywhere.
Army base in Newport News.
Yeah,
Fort Eustis.
in Hampton. That's where you live, Steve?
Huh? I had an aunt and uncle who lived in Matthews County, Virginia.
I never heard
That's a
of
little
that.
bit tidewater, and
Was
maybe 45 minutes from Newport News.
I've never heard
But my
of that.
uncle worked at Fort Eustis. He was
Oh, yes,
in the
I
Army.
have. Yes, Fort Eustis,
And-
that's where I've heard.
uh-huh.
Right outside of
Yeah, so I
Newport
kind
News,
of know
yeah.
those. Beautiful roads in Virginia. I
Mhm.
always commented that they kept the nicest paved roads. I feel like that's
They
kinda true.
do in some places.
In some places, but not all.
It's sort of like
Yeah,
here.
most
But
of-
again, like everywhere, there's change.